Your alternative talk radio contact, The Planet, KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacence, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
I obviously listened to, the clip that you sent. I admit I didn't listen to the whole thing because I do like to be surprised a little bit by some things if I'm able to. So, Stephen, wherever you want to start and, whatever paths you want to go down. But tonight we're going to talk about Bigfoot.
Yeah, that sounds good. I was a teenager at the time. It was June 24th, 12 years ago. I remember it was about 12:30, 1 o'clock, midday. I was at the cabin. I decided to walk upstream just because. And then about 50, 60 feet up from the cabin, there's a small fishing hole. I got there, I got this feeling like I was being watched. The creek was to my left. I looked over across the creek. I didn't see anything at first. And across the creek, in between me and the cabin, distance-wise, out from the brush, a mother Bigfoot holding a very young one. Couldn't have been more than a month or two old at the most, I guess.
Wow.
And then I remember standing there staring at that, thinking, am I seeing what I really think I'm seeing? Then I got another feeling like I was being watched, only this one was kind of different. It was kind of ever get this feeling like something bad's happening? It was kind of like that at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
I looked more upstream, and there right in front of me, this big male. He was literally right across the creek from me, staring directly at me.
Well, that would explain the bad feeling, I suppose, right? How close would you say he was to you?
No more than 35 feet.
Youch.
Yeah, and I was literally paralyzed by fear just looking at him. From the brush, all I could see was the upper part of his chest and up. His shoulders were about four, a little over 4 feet wide. From where I was standing to where he was standing was a good 3 to 3.5 feet. So he's got to be at least 8 feet tall, because me and him were eye level. And I remember the shade of his coat. It was this impossible shade of black. Like, this shade of black should not exist.
Can you describe that a little more? Like, it might be hard to do so, but what do you mean?
Just how dark of a shade of black.
You know what, that's really cool. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but really quickly, it's so cool that you mentioned that, because I don't know if you've heard me tell my shadow person story, but that's exactly how I try to explain it. I'm like, it's the deepest, darkest black from the darkest night with no stars, and then somehow they were blacker than that.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's hard to describe that, isn't it? Like, unless you see something like that, it's really hard to impart that.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm sorry. So you were saying it's this black color, and then I stepped all over you, whatever you were going to say after that.
It's fine. time. The parts of his face that were not covered with fur were actually kind of like a regular black color, but his fur was so dark it made that regular shade of black look almost like it had a grayish tint to it. It was that dark. And I remember he had a very box-like head. Yeah, sagittal crest. That's a lot of Bigfoot encounters. You hear about them having the sagittal crest, that part of their head that's on the back of their head that's prominent.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have one of them. It was very little prominence on that. It was almost like his head was somewhat small for his body. But I remember his brow line was so prominent that it made his eyes look almost sunken in. His nose was very thin at the brow line, but it got wide at the nostrils. He had very wide, thin lips, and his eyes, they pierced right through me. Those eyes were very gorilla-like in color and look, but they were also human-like at the same time. They were kind of a copperish color, like halfway between copper and red, but they had almost flakes, I guess you could call them, of orange in them.
And would you say that the face just in general was more ape-looking or more human-looking?
Actually, it was more human-like. It did have ape-like features, but it was like halfway between an ape face and halfway between a human face, but it was more human-like than ape-like.
Did you see his teeth at all?
No, he kept his mouth closed. He didn't show any teeth.
And what was he doing with his hands? Did you see those at all?
No, I didn't see what he was doing with his hands. I was so focused on that piercing gaze he had on me.
Did he ever move, or did you see him?
No. No, he didn't move. He stayed exactly still, just staring directly at me.
That is really,
I couldn't
really
move
close.
at all.
Right. I'm sure.
I couldn't move. I was paralyzed by fear. At the time, it seemed like forever, but looking back on it, it couldn't have been more than 10, 15 seconds at the most.
Mm-hmm.
I was just paralyzed by fear.
And then you left first?
Yeah, I left. I walked away back to the cabin. I actually went back very reluctantly later on that day, and I didn't see anything.
Did you go back armed or with someone?
No, I didn't go back armed. I didn't tell anybody about my experience. I knew no one would believe me.
Was it kind of worse than they wouldn't believe you, but you thought they'd make fun of you?
It's not the making fun of me part. It's like something like that. It's like not knowing that you might be met with skepticism. It's like, who's going to believe that? Because I had heard of them at the time, but I never put any thought into them. So in my mind at the time, it's like, nobody's going to believe me.
Right. And Stephen, do you mind if we say what state this was in?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Very cool. Lots of stuff goes on in that state. All kinds of goodies go on in Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, you got places that have really all kinds of things other than Bigfoot and Bigfoot in the same location, right? What a lot of people like to call kind of a hot spot. They got lots of those there.
Yeah, I've heard some rumors. I've also heard of Dogman being in Pennsylvania too.
Now, what do you think about the Dogman?
Dogman? I believe Dogman could exist, but I've never seen one, and I've never had anybody that I know of seen one, as far as I know.
Right.
But I do believe it's possible they exist.
So, a really interesting part of your story is the fact that you said that this mother Bigfoot was holding this really small one, and I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that they thought it was only maybe a month old. That is really quite the little, almost near newborn, if you will. Why do you I mean, just the size of it, you're assuming, and that's why you thought it was maybe just like a month old? How big would you say that thing was?
I'd say it was about as big as a 2 or 3 year old human.
Okay.
But I'm only guessing at its age because I know nothing about their growth periods. I know nothing about that. I assume it was a very young one based off of its size compared to their adult size. That's what I'm going off of.
Now, what did those two look like? What kind of details could you pull off of those two?
The mother, it's actually kind of surprising. She's still around after all this time, but I know the least about her. She's about 7.5 feet tall, regular brown fur. She has a little more of a prominent sagittal crest than the original male. And just like the male, she has a very prominent brow line, very wide, thin lips. She tends to keep her distance more than the other ones I've seen. I know the least about her, which is surprising because she's been around this whole time. Now, the young one, the daughter, she's 12.5 years old, somewhere between 12.5 to 13 years old. To see her go from that little one to this adult one, it's great. I actually saw her earlier this late spring this year, directly across the creek. No, not where I saw her father, I assume it was, but more downstream, directly across the creek from the cabin. There's an oak tree that splits off into 2 pieces at the base near the ground. She hid her body as much as she could at the base, but poked her head out from where the tree wide off, where it broke off.
Mm-hmm.
She has the most prominent sagittal crest. Her face is kind of more of an oval shape instead of a box-like shape like her parents. And her eyes she has big, glowing eyes. I don't know if it was because of how the sun was shining on her at that particular moment, but her eyes have this natural glowing quality. It's like partway between yellow and orange, like halfway between those two colors, but very vibrant, glowing.
So, Stephen, how do you know that it's a little girl?
Oh, I knew it was a girl as soon as she developed into puberty and she developed breasts.
Gotcha. Well, I had to ask because everyone's they're gonna yell at their listening device if I don't ask that. So I had to. And obviously, then the mother also has breasts, so that's how you know it's the mom.
Yeah.
So, now once you had the first sighting, then obviously you said you went back shortly and you didn't see them, but now you've seen the daughter and the mom, and they seem to be kind of around that area. Is that certain times of the year, or do you think they're there all year round?
It's almost like I see them most of the time from spring to fall.
Mm-hmm.
I hardly ever see them there in winter. Of course, I don't go there in winter that often, as often as I do other times of the year, but seems like they're around once it starts to get at least a little bit warm to the time it starts to get cold most of the year, like early to mid-spring to early to late fall. Seems like that's when I have the most encounters with them.
And are you in a super rural area of Pennsylvania?
Not super rural. There's a I don't know what you call it. There's a Sheetz, Dollar General, and a sports bar about 20 minutes away from the area I live in, but in the town right next to my encounters, there's literally only one gas station. That's about it.
Okay. So not exactly, you're not like just outside some urban sprawl at all. Like that's not the case. So, okay, that makes sense. No. Do you think that there are other, I mean, we're assuming they're a family unit, right? Do you think there's other family units in the area, or that's kind of their area, so those are the three that you have the encounters with?
Actually, I haven't seen the original male for years now, but this year I had encounters with a new male. This one is not quite as tall as the father, but taller than the mother. He has kind of a sandy blonde coat, but unlike the other ones, his eyes are actually greenish.
Mm. And so walk me through your first time seeing him and how close you were and all of that.
It was either April or May of this year. The first time I saw him, it was the visit after. Remember earlier I mentioned how close I got to the daughter, all grown up?
Mm-hmm.
It was the time I visited the cabin after that I first saw him. I was sitting on the back porch of the cabin. I just happened to look upstream, and I saw the mother. And normally I have no problems with the mother, but kind of like with the father, I just got this bad feeling as soon as I looked at her. So I thought, okay, something isn't right here. I never get a feeling like that from an encounter with her.
And she's watching you?
Yes.
Hmm. How close is she?
She is 150 feet upstream, and because of that really threw me off, because I'm not used to getting that negative vibe from her.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, okay, something's wrong here. So I go inside the cabin, and I look out one of the kitchen doors, and about 40, 50 feet away from the last time I saw the daughter, there's this new male. It really threw me off. Just the look on his face was perplexing. It's like, the way he looked at me, who are you and what are you doing here? He looks kind of half shocked, half irritated, half confused. And I remember he kept turning his head back and forth between me and the mother, like, who are you? He kept looking over at the mother like, who is he? How am I supposed to react to this? What should I do?
Stephen, I think, are you using earbuds?
No, I am not.
Oh, okay. Something just keeps scraping against your microphone. I'm sorry. It was kind of muffling what you were saying. It keeps like making a scraping noise.
Oh, okay.
So, man, that's got to give you kind of a creepy feeling because you're in the house and you're like, well, I'm actually in my house, so that's what I'm doing here. What are you? You're probably like, what are you doing here? Because you're a new guy.
Yeah, both of us, as far as I could tell, were experiencing the exact same feelings. Like,
yeah,
who are you? What are you doing here? What's going on? I don't know how to react.
So what happened? I mean, did you keep watching him and then they eventually sunk back into the forest, or? Yes. Did that make you a little bit hesitant to go back outside at any point?
Yeah. I didn't go back outside for the rest of the day. I went outside. Next time I went outside was the next day, because I didn't know how far away he was. I didn't know how he would react. I mean, I didn't know what to think.
So, I mean, what are your theories on that? Do you think that the original male passed away and this is kind of the new beau, if you will? I mean,
Yeah, my theory is that the original male either passed away or moved on to another area, and then later on, this new male showed up. I mean, there was a significant time gap between this new male and the original male. So I'm not entirely sure what to think of it, but as far as I know, it's almost like there's got to be at least one male, if not a dominant male in every clan. That's my theory.
mm-hmm. So who else is in, and it's okay if you don't want to say, but I mean, when you're at the cabin, are you there by yourself or are there other people usually there with you?
99% of the time, I'm the only one up there.
Oh. What about the other 1%? I mean, but you've not caught any hint that anyone else in the cabin has seen these things because they don't talk about it, and neither do you, right?
No. As far as I know, I am the only one that has seen them.
I mean, do you hunt around that property at all? Do you ever take a gun out?
I do bring a firearm with me whenever I go there, but I stopped hunting there. Because over the years of my experiences with them, it's like we have this unspoken agreement. Like, I have my own little area, they have their area. So if they want to show themselves to me, cool. Other than that, we do our own thing.
Well, that's good, right? Considering how large they are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It certainly seems that, I mean, they want you to see them. They could easily hide from you or peek behind a bush. You'd never see them. And they can stand still better than most statues, I think, that we've seen, standing in fountains and such. So I just wonder kind of why they would let you see them. They just, or, I think with the males, though, it's a little bit easier to guess. They want to make sure that that they're dominant and don't come in my woods. And like you said, here's your part and here's my part. Do you think, though, that first sighting that you really surprised that whole little trio there, when you saw the mother with the little one?
Yeah, exactly. The only thing I could think of is that they just happened to be there at that specific time, and I just happened to walk by there at that specific time. So possibly the original male was thinking, okay, are you a threat to my kid? I'm going to stare you down. That's my theory, and yeah. Obviously, I stood there in fear. I could tell he knew I meant no harm, so I just walked away. So he knew I wasn't a threat. And over time, it's like the daughter was like when she was growing up, it's like she was a curious kid. She would always sneak away from her parents to come see me. But the thing is, the big male knew that, but still he was protective of his kid. So every time the daughter would come over to see me, he always had to make his presence known to both of us, like teaching his kid, hey, you got to be careful around this guy, keep your distance from him. But he also let his presence known to me. Exact same concept as his daughter. You stay away from her. She's my kid. Keep your distance.
And when she would come and see you, what would that be like? I mean, you would see her out the kitchen window or off the back porch?
Most of the time I would be outside. It's like she would try to come as close as possible to me, but she would try to hide. Except she wasn't very good at hiding. It was kind of obvious. She was there
What do you
Like,
mean? How would she? I mean, the way that she was standing, or she'd poke out too far from a tree or something.
Yeah, poking out too far from the tree and the brushes. Like that time I mentioned, she just poked her head out, just her head from that tree that came off in two pieces at the ground.
Mm-hmm.
She only showed her head, but when she was coming in, like growing into her body, it wasn't just her head. It was like her head and like half her body poking out from the tree. She just wasn't good at hiding when she was really young.
That's kind of funny, though, because that does show the intelligence and the need for the stealth and them to execute it actually does get better and grow as they grow, right? As they get those skills kind of amped up as they get older.
Yes.
What's the closest you've ever been to her?
Closest I have ever been to her was 45 feet.
Mm. And what did that encounter look like? Were you walking through the woods and then you stopped because you saw her and she's poking out too much?
That was the encounter I mentioned earlier.
Okay. So how many times have you seen all of these guys over the years?
Rough estimate off the top of my head, 15 to 20 times.
And who have you seen the most then? The daughter?
The most I've seen, physically seen, I want to say the daughter physically seen. But the closest I've ever been to one of them was this new male. But it was actually my last encounter. It was right as I was about to go to bed. And I shut everything off, all the lights, all electronics, crawled into bed, and out of nowhere, on one side of the cabin, from literally the other side of the wall, I heard him tapping his finger right there along the wall. He had to be no more than 15 feet away from me. He was just letting me know he was there. I didn't feel threatened at all. Hey, how's it going? I'm here. How you doing?
He's right on the other side of the wall.
Yeah.
And that was and you said that was shortly after you had shut the lights off, shut the electronics off, so it was probably obviously easier to hear stuff too. But he was obviously watching what you were doing. And now he's like, oh, You're going to bed. Well, let me just let you know I'm right here.
Yeah. It was amazing to be literally right there on the other side of the wall, literally right near one. Oh man, that was amazing.
Did you have any desire to tap back to him?
I did, but I was too tired, so I said out loud, I know you're there, but just let me sleep. And then I went to bed, no more tapping. So I acknowledged him that I knew he was there. And I let him know, I just want to go to bed right now.
And he actually obliged. He stopped tapping?
Yeah.
And you said that was really recent?
That was my last encounter with them. That had to have been half a year ago at the most. That was the last time I went up to the cabin.
And then you probably wait for winter to get done and you go back out there again, right?
Normally I do, but I'm actually considering going up to the cabin sometime soon. Month or so.
Now, have you ever thought about setting up any recording equipment, either audio or video?
Yeah, I've thought about it, but I've also heard that it's extremely rare to get any video or audio of any of them. And plus, that'd pretty much be the only time I ever use any kind of recording device at all.
Sorry, it's getting real muffled again, Steven. Sorry. It's like a lot of shuffling around. It's stomping on what you're saying. No, that is totally true as far as the audio and the video. But again, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, so. And of course, it is said that a lot of them know what that stuff maybe is, or they'll at least be very weary of it, and then you could maybe kind of frighten them off, which sounds like you don't want to do that. I mean, they haven't
Exactly.
made you feel threatened, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Except, I mean, to you, you're kind of enjoying the new male being around because of the wall tapping incident?
No, I actually don't mind them. I'm not used to one being that willing to get that close to me, regardless if I can see him or not, but it actually doesn't bother me at all. I mean, obviously he is curious of me, and he knows that I mean no harm to him or the others. It's like, he's just curious of me. He just wants to get to know me better. That's from what I see in him.
Now, what about if you're walking around the property or even near the cabin? Is there any other sign that a lot of Bigfoot researchers bring up?
Every once in a while, I will see this large tree literally laying down in a crook of another live tree, but it's always on the other side of the creek, like their side of the creek, their area. I automatically look at it and think, I wonder if they did that.
All right. And what about footprints? Have you seen any of those around?
I've only ever seen one footprint, and that was years ago. It was the daughter when she was still growing up. That was about a football field and a half away from the cabin on actually my side of the cabin. I just happened to walk upstream and I stayed on my side of the creek, and I saw a footprint. This footprint was actually facing towards the cabin.
Well, they're certainly interested in you. I mean, have you come back to the cabin after you've been gone, and then there's a sign that they've come up to the cabin or messed with the doors or windows or anything like that?
No, but they actually did leave me a hickory shell literally right in front of the door.
And that was after you had been gone for a time?
It was actually right around the time I saw the daughter last. I had heard of gifting, so I had a piece of fool's gold, and there's a bridge about 50 to 100 feet away upstream from where I had my first encounter with the male, the original male. Walked upstream to that bridge, walked across it, left that piece of fool's gold right near a stump. Next time I came back, there was a hickory shell laying right there, literally right in front of the door.
So did you start to leave out more gifts for them after that?
Yes. You know those foot pedals that like professional track athletes start off their races on?
Mm-hmm.
I had a small piece from one of them. I left that one in the same exact spot. That was the last time I was there. I'll have to go back up to see if they left me another piece, but I have also left them whole garlic cloves. Next time I went up, garlic cloves were gone.
Well, sorry. How do you know that it was? Why do you think it was them that took the garlic cloves and not something else like a raccoon or something?
I had heard a rumor from people who supposedly, someone like Todd Standing. I'm a fan of Todd Standing. A while ago, I heard in one of his live streams that they actually eat garlic. I don't know how it happens, but apparently them eating garlic helps them stave off mosquitoes and gnats and stuff like that from biting them.
Man, I'll have to give that a try.
Yeah.
Everybody in Florida, give that a try and let us know how that goes, right?
Yeah.
Because I hate those skeeters. Oh, my goodness. Some people, they never get bit. I'm not one of those people. I don't know if you are, but that's worth a shot. That's interesting. I hadn't heard that before. All right. So you got the gifting going on. And so now you're saying you do want to go back up to the cabin pretty soon. Is that kind of because you're like, oh, well, it's been so long since I've had anything go on. You're kind of missing them?
Yes, yes.
Are you worried at all that they're gone? Like that they're not going to be there? Is that why maybe you feel this sense of urgency to get back out there?
A little bit, but not as much as I used to. When I first started going up to the cabin by myself, I did wonder about that, and I wouldn't have encounters every single time I went up. One thing I think that they do is they move from area to area to let their food population, like whether it's berries or wildlife, whatever they eat, I think that they move from area to area like any other predator to let their food population in a certain area replenish. Eventually they'll come back, hunt in that area, go to another area. They're smart about their hunting. They really take what they need to eat and then move on to another area and let their food population replenish.
So what other encounters have you had with these things that you'd want to share with us?
The last encounter that I had with the big male, I remember it was summertime. In that little fishing hole where I had my first encounter with them, I went in there because it's deep enough for me to take a bath in there. There's no running water at the cabin, so if you want to take a bath there, you got to jump in the creek. I was in the cabin taking a bath. I just happened to look upstream, and there's this big male just sitting there on a rock in the creek, just sitting there observing me. I looked at him, made sure he knew I looked at him, because one thing I noticed, if they're observing me, it's like I feel the need to let them know that I know that they're there, like directly look at them.
Mm-hmm.
I directly looked at him, let him know that I knew he was there, went back to taking a bath. About a minute later, I looked back up, he was gone. He just showed up. No noise, no movement whatsoever that I heard or saw. Went back to doing what I was doing. I looked back up, gone. He disappeared just as quickly and silently as he left.
So being in that, really pretty vulnerable state and not being armed, I don't think that you're armed or had a weapon maybe at the shoreline or whatever, or the creek, but you don't feel the need to keep an eye on him at all times? You look away?
Yeah, I don't feel the need to keep an eye on him at all times. It's difficult to put into words, but the best I can say it is like we have this mental understanding that they know I mean no harm to them, and they realize that, so they won't do me any harm. That's the best way I can put it into words.
So you've seen them a number of times. Honestly, your sightings sound nearly, perfect as far as you don't feel threatened. You're close enough. You know exactly what it is. And all you have to do is walk outside your cabin, basically, and they're there. It's an amazing scenario, really. So after all these encounters with them, what's your theory on what they are?
My theory on what they are, I believe that they are a flesh and blood creature. Now, as for something like cloaking or mind speech, for example, I don't know about that, but my theory on something like cloaking, I just think that they are masters of their environment. They are so well adapted to the outdoors that they can naturally blend into their environment, regardless of what their fur color is, kind of like a deer or any other well-known animal. They have this natural camouflage. They're just masters of their environment. They know every route. They know every trail. They know every little trick to get what they need to survive and eat and drink, whatever.
So what about, and I'm totally on board with that. That's what I say all the time. I like to call them the Liam Neesons of the woods. They're badasses. They just know what they're doing. But why do you think we haven't found a body? Or that one, if they have been hit by a car, why didn't the next car then come up and come upon it? Like a Harry and the Henderson situation. Do you think they do things like bury their dead or drag them off or help them if they're hurt, or, like they're always moving in a unit to where that never happens?
I believe that same thing. I believe that, as far as I know, it's very rare to see a single individual that's going off on its own. And I think that they, at the very least, carry off their dead, if not bury their dead, because they're smart enough to know enough about humans that humans tend to look for them, especially in this day and age. Everybody, even if they're a skeptic, they're always going out in the woods. Yeah, I'm going to go look for Bigfoot. And then they're out there thinking, you know what? I know what you're looking for. You're looking for me, so I'm just going to protect my own.
All right.
They're smart enough to know that humans look for them. So they try to keep hidden in at least some cases.
Well, I certainly appreciate you sharing your stories. Will you keep me in the loop if you go back up to the cabin and if you see any sign of them, or of course see one of them around?
Yes, I will. Right. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the cohorts to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. suddenly become somebody different, living somewhere else. They will say reincarnation means this, that if you sitting here now are really convinced that you're the same person who walked in the door half an hour ago, you're being reincarnated. If you are liberated, you will understand that you're not. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. There is only the present. That's the only real you that there is. The Zen master Dogen put it in this way. He said, spring does not become the summer. First there is summer, and then there is spring. When you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, get up and walk across the room. And he comes back and he says, where are your footprints? They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.